If you're going to have fragments, they may as well be of silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Galax and Petty. And let us dawn forth towards the news. It is. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
I was gonna say it was a fairly uneventful week. And then yeah. Turns out since the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, they had their big old parade today. And first my knee doctor was originally going to cancel that appointment because I don't even know. And then they decided against it. So now I was able to go see my knee doctor. So, good thing about that is I don't need a surgery immediately after the wonderful slide job that I pulled off earlier in January. Note the massive air quotes there.
Like, how bad was that?
I slid forward on I guess, icy patch of mud, and my sister said it sounded like I stepped on a twig. The pop was so loud. So
Ouch.
yeah, not good. He did prescribe me some custom knee braces. So I see the I guess technician, I want to say, about that. Not this Monday, but the following Monday. So I think that's just for measurements, though, for this upcoming appointment. I don't know how long the braces themselves will take to make. But as long as I get something to, help protect my knee, because these ones are specifically going to have, like, plating and or padding on the knee itself. So when I do fall, I'm not, causing any more damage.
Right.
Because physical disabilities suck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been fun and eventful the past couple days. Supposedly all my CPAP equipment provider needs now is a pre-authorization, but I'm still going through more inane bullcrap with my doctor's office. So this is something that should have taken maybe a week tops, has now taken almost 2 months, which is kind of infuriating. I'm just glad that my machine hasn't decided to conk out yet, or else I'd be a little more pissed off. As far as gaming goes, I actually found a interesting game on the eShop called Okinawa Rush, which I've been enjoying. I basically paid like $2 for it because I had Switch like eShop credit stuff, and it's been worth it. It's like classic style beat 'em up. So yeah, that's been fun. And I've also been playing Power Wash Simulator because it's on Game Pass, so sure, why not? And yeah, I think that's it from me.
All right. Well, Alex, you're up.
Well, we are still without a dryer. I forget if I said this, but it got the first thing that it had wrong with it got repaired. But when we tried to use it afterwards, it wasn't making things hot. So now we're waiting for some fuses to come in.
Oh, those are the best.
Yeah. But hopefully I'll be able to either go to the laundromat or use a friend's or something, because I need getting to the point where I need to do laundry again. But it's not the very end, unlike when we first found out that it was broken, so that's an improvement.
Hmm.
Our Digimon pre-release at the local game store was yesterday, and I got my butt kicked because I had my pre-release involved several good cards, but I never got the ones that worked well together, and I also got a grand total of 0 Tamer cards in my entire pull, so
Damn.
that's generally not good for, like, fixing anything.
Yeah.
By fixing, I mean, like, making it more reliable.
Yeah. Sometimes it do be like that with pre-release.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Game-wise, pretty much still playing Pokemon and Splatoon 3. The Valentine Panda Mouse event was interesting. I didn't really get anything great from it, but I got plenty of fruit sandwich materials. So we'll see how
right,
that
was
goes.
a thing.
It was just a minor one. It wasn't a 7-star or anything. Just caps out at 5, so no actual special rewards, just unusual amounts of ingredients.
Hmm.
And I think that's about it.
Okay. I guess it's my go then. Let's see. Yes, my week has still been dealing with the sink, and it's still leaking even after 3 plumbers visits.
Jesus.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean it's smaller leak this time, but
Small leak is generally better, but no leak is best.
Which is why we're getting why another plumber is coming out tomorrow, and hopefully this saga will be done and dusted, because this has been going on for 2 weeks. Like, to say it's been massively inconvenient is perhaps an understatement. Right.
Indeed.
And outside of that, it's been a fairly quiet week. Like, so, yeah, that's my news for this week in brief. So, merrily, we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us at long last is Jin, or aka Verinus.
Yes, hi. It's Verinius. Yes, correct.
Verinus.
But you can also call me Jin. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Indeed. I'm glad we got the time issues sorted out this time.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they threatened to arise this time, but better to be too early than too late.
True. I made sure to wake up extra early to make sure I don't miss it like last time.
Yeah. And indeed, you are here. So let us begin the proceedings by asking this question that we ask all of our guests. That is,
Mhm.
what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Oh, personally, so I grew up in the 90s. So at
Mhm.
that time, we had I think we called it a family computer, the Famicom in the Philippines. I guess because it was imported from Japan. Guess
Famicom, yes.
yeah. So it was fun. I was playing Mario and this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up, and then we had the PlayStation One come up shortly after, and that's when I got hooked. Now, for context, in the Philippines, you couldn't buy any original discs for the PlayStation One. As much as you wanted to buy originals, like it's only now that I'm realizing it that everything that was being sold was probably pirated versions of discs, but because there was no way. So it was very cheap, like $1 per game. Right, you go to the mall, it's $1 per disc, and so my dad would buy me games every now and then, and I would enjoy the RPGs mostly, like Xenogears, and I mean, I also played like Parappa the Rapper and racing games. Whatever games we could have our hands on. And that got me hooked because I wasn't really the type to play sports when I was a kid. And then we started having a PC and got into Dota, Warcraft, Red Alert. So also some online games, turn-based RPGs like Adventure Quest, a little bit of RuneScape, things like that. And it just built on from there. My last console was the PS2, and then my next one would be the Nintendo Switch. It's just a hobby really for me. But as on a professional level, I wouldn't say I'm a professional because I haven't released my first game yet. So I'm more of a hobbyist that's kind of trying to wrap it up. And it was when RPG Maker MV went for free on Steam for like for one weekend. And so every now and then during the summer, they would have a free weekend test. So I tried that and I had fun with it because I had a wild imagination. I have a wild imagination and I liked being able to create. And I just had fun with it, created my own thing and enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to program. I don't know how to do art. I don't know anything about game design. And I challenged myself as a personal experiment. Can I learn this craft, this video game making, without any background experience? Can I just learn it and make something? So I did that as a personal challenge and I had fun with it. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on game design, how to actually use the program. And I made my first demo. I released it on itch.io, and people liked it. I was expecting like 50 people max to play it. And of those 50 people, maybe like 40 people will like it, 10 people will dislike it. And then over 100 people played it, and it just went up from there. And now that's when I realized, hey, I think I have something here, and this might be worth pursuing. And so that's what led me here to this moment.
Okay. I'm like, so how long have you been tinkering in RPG Maker now?
I think about 5 years. So since 2018. Yeah, since 2018. So this is my fifth year working on it.
And has that entire time been dedicated to this project? Or have you built other games in
Yeah,
RPG Maker?
this is the whole time it's been this one project. Now I know a lot of people would get bored or would get sick of working on the same game for 4 years, even if it's just for 1 year, right? It's just so hard to stick to it. But I created an environment that would help me stick to it. So I made social media accounts for it. I went to conventions, I went to one convention presenting this game, and I made a Discord, and I just surrounded myself. How social media gives you the dopamine hit whenever someone likes it or retweets a screenshot of the game. So things like that, just to help me stick to it. And I have to admit, there were times when I felt burnt out. But so if I'm burnt out, the solution isn't to quit, but the solution is to take a break. So sometimes I would take a couple of months break without touching the game, or maybe I just do the story, write the story a little bit, and that's fine. That's fine. So that's how I kept it up. So I'd finish one update and then I'd take a rest, and then finish another update and then take another few months rest. So, but in the future I do want to make smaller games, small horror games, or just to experiment with other engines like Unity or Unreal Engine, or maybe even Game Maker or Godot. So just to learn more and experiment more in the future.
A lofty and noble goal, no doubt. But I suppose you still have this current game, which is called Law Mage Academy. So, and I suppose we should delve into, before we get into more of the development side of thing, we should talk about the game itself. Like, for example, what is Law Mage Academy for the uninitiated?
Okay, so Law Mage Academy is a magic school JRPG where you craft potions, learn spells, make friends, go on adventures and missions, and just discover the mystery behind the academy. And maybe a more attractive spiel for RPG players is that imagine Persona 4, mixed with Octopath Traveler and Manakemia. If you're familiar with people are familiar with the Manakemia aesthetic in particular. And then so those three games basically mixed together, and then when I played other games, I incorporated some of the ideas from those games into here. But basically those three games are my main inspiration.
Okay. And what are law mages exactly?
Okay, so law mages there are ordinary mages, but there are certain spells that normal mages are not allowed. They're not allowed to cast. Not that they can't physically or ability wise, but it's illegal for them to use these spells. Law mages are these special mages that undergo certain training, and so that they can control these spells and cast it properly. And they have a license. And because they have these special privileges, they're in better positions in society. They tend to be more well off, and they're more respected. And so you, as a law mage candidate, you're going through this law mage academy to train as a law mage to become one, basically.
Okay. Hey, so they're the ones who handle the forbidden spells.
Yes, correct.
Gotta admit, that's not exactly what I was picturing when I heard that name.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking like the Wizard Police or something.
Right. Also that could be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have these special powers, right, these forbidden spells, you're generally more powerful than most people. So they also get commissioned for missions, like, oh, we want to clear this very powerful monster, or we want to settle a dispute. So they're also kind of like lawyers in a way, kind of like they have police power, but they're also like lawyers in a way. And you can see that in the game because there's a prosecutor and a defense, and there's a judge who are all law mages.
So does this turn into Phoenix Wright at any point?
Yeah, at some point, sort of.
Okay. How does this sort of turn into Phoenix Wright?
Well, not really, not gameplay wise, but there will be a trial at some point in the demo. It's in the demo now too, so there will be a trial, and the game. Let's just say the game pays attention to your actions during that one mission, so you'll be judged accordingly.
So Chrono Trigger.
Right.
Okay. But anyway, so what's like? Is there a particular overarching story here, or is it a bit more episodic? Like, you go to class and hang out with friends, save the world after class? What's the
Mhm.
deal?
Okay. So there is one overarching story, but in the demo, it covers 2 months. It covers 2 months, but the first month is basically the tutorial. It introduces you to the system of taking classes, talking to friends, and other stuff. Battle. But then at month 2, you get to this class where you have to go out of the academy and explore a new area, and the players discover something, and they have a choice on what to do with. They have two choices on what to do with this something. I don't want to spoil it in case anyone's interested in playing it. And that's where the story picks off. Like, from based on what you do there, it kind of introduces you into the overarching story by the second month. And there are still some side stories per character, per friend. They have their own side stories, but their side stories still ties down to that overarching story. So it's not like, I'm not a fan of that saving the world kind of trope in JRPGs. I think it's very overused. Not that it's instantly bad the moment the game does that, but I think you have to, people's expectations are so high nowadays because of the very good examples from games in the past. So you have to do a little spin on it, and that's what I'm hoping to do. It's not just one emperor who's evil, and you have to overthrow that emperor, and it turns out the emperor is being controlled by this evil god. No. I want to focus on the human condition and how humans decide, how they have conflicting interests, and because of those conflicting interests, one side is portrayed as evil by the other, things like that. So we're going into that kind of theme. Sure, you have the antagonist, you have the protagonist and an antagonist in a story, but the antagonist does not necessarily have to be the villain. The villain could be the protagonist, right? We've seen that happen in other stories. But so what I want in this game is for the players to decide, to think for themselves, who is the villain really? Is there even a villain, or is this just a bunch of conflicting interests? So I want the players to decide that for themselves as they play along.
Well, that begs the question: is that kind of morality system tied to gameplay here?
There is not overly complicated. It's a very, very simple morality system. There's not even like there's no gameplay mechanic that decides if you're good or evil. Like, there's no meter that says, oh, you're plus 2 points for good, plus 2 points for evil. So there's nothing like that. But there are certain choices that you have to make, and these choices will reflect in your experiences, in little experiences in the game that will just come back to you. Oh, remember, you made this decision. Now this is happening, and it's up to you to decide: was that a good decision or a bad one? Or was that good or evil? Or do I regret doing that? Or would I do it again in my give it the chance? You know.
And I'm assuming this has an effect on the story.
Yes. Not the way it affects the story is more like how Life is Strange did it. It has an effect, like micro effects, micro changes in the world, and it builds up as you play along. So each person's experience on the game could be different from another person's experience. But the overall story remains the same, but the experience could be vastly different.
Okay. Yeah, because this is starting to sound like a season of The Walking Dead rather than, say, let's say Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, in terms of morality choices.
Right.
At any rate, so what do you do in class? Like, is there actual gameplay here, or is just, let's say, conversational things?
In the basic classes, introduces you to the basic mechanics of the game. So in some classes, you choose which potion you want to craft, which spell do you want to learn, teaches you how to craft. And then as you go through the months, you advance in the months, you get classes where you can recruit a character, you can learn some recipes, new recipes. You can get a quest. So any other kind of, you can earn an item. So any kind of there are certain rewards, but of course it's still a dialogue kind of system. There's a teacher talking to you, explaining things, because I want to emulate that of actually going to class, right? So there's this teacher talking to you, but classes differ. So there could be a lecture type of class, or it could be a field mission where you have to go outside and maybe hunt some monsters or look for this particular item. So those are the two general classifications of classes: field missions and lecture missions. But they can differ in rewards and roles in the game.
Okay. And is there any sort of choice, player choice in the classes? Like, do you get to pick the classes, or do you have to go to a certain class?
Very good question. So you can decide to pick which classes you want to take in a month. The game doesn't tell you to pick this class in this particular day. It does have some prerequisites. So some classes you can't take. For example, class on combat basics. You can't take that class unless you took the potion making class and the spellcasting class. So you do have these prerequisites, but it doesn't tell you when do you have to take it. However, there are classes that are limited time, so they expire after a certain number of days. But most of the classes don't expire, so you can take them. But the game is designed in such a way that by the time the month ends, you will have finished the classes that I want you to take. Because if I don't do that, the players will get stuck, soft locked out of the game. But yeah, it doesn't tell you when you should take it. It's totally up to the player when they want to sign up for a class, or do they just want to hang out with friends, or do they just want to go out, do some missions, kill some monsters. So the time system is it's an integral part of the experience.
So this is time sensitive, or it isn't time sensitive?
It doesn't rush you. I mean, you don't have a choice but to spend the days. It's not per hour or per second. You have one day, similar to how Persona does it, right? So you have one day and one night. So it's up to you what to decide on that, but you have to spend it. There are some. At the end of the month, you have one core event, unskippable. You will have to take that. So the rest of the days is basically you preparing for that end of the month event. So whatever you did there, you have to live up to that once that event happens. Basically.
Okay. And let me see here. So, who is the you in all this? Is this a character that is customizable, a blank slate, or is this a character that you have created?
Mhm.
Like can you like pick gender, skin color, that kind of thing?
Right. So at the beginning, it asks you for your gender or style. It's either A or B, and then if it asks you some questions, it's like a quiz, 4 questions, and that determines your starting stats and your house. So there are 4 houses in the game. Primarily aesthetic for now. The difference is just aesthetic, and maybe some characters differ. So you have that determines where you start, the area that you start in, and your colors. But it's totally up to the player how they want to build the skills of the character. You can also name your character, by the way, so you can change the name. The default name is Sile, but you can change it to anything, provided it's within the character limit. And yeah, it's more like a silent protagonist. It is a silent protagonist, so you can immerse yourself in the game as if it was you in the game.
Okay. And what about let's see. How do I put this? Party supporting characters, classmates, potential love interests, since you met,
Mhm.
what's going on there?
Okay. You recruit them. Well, you make friends with them. It's another term for recruitment. So you will encounter them as you play. It's very hard to miss them unless you're intentionally avoiding recruiting them, right? So it's very hard to not recruit them. But the game encourages you to just talk to them, get to know the characters. What are their issues? What are their problems? Who are they? Why are they in the Law Mage Academy in the first place? And then you start to know more about them. And then as you go from the personal level, you begin to see their background. Like, where do they fit in the story? So what is this person's role? The things that are happening to this character, how is that related to the overall story? And because I try my best to relate each character's quest line to the main quest line. So there is value there. So as you get to know them, you also try to influence them on what kind of skills they learn, what spells they should learn next, what should be their stat growth. They're going to ask you, should I focus more on strength or magic? And then you say, oh, yeah, I want you to focus on magic. So that's how they grow, how you influence them to grow in a way.
Okay. And here, how big is your party? And how many recruitable characters are there in the game?
You can take a maximum of 4 people at a time, including your player. So you plus 3 other friends. But there's a total of 12 recruitable characters planned. In the demo, there's 4. Yeah, in the demo, there's currently 4, 1 from each house. But there's a total of 12, and 4 of those are optional. Like, you need to meet certain conditions before you can recruit these 4 characters. So people can miss them.
And let me see here. And on the flip side of things, what will you encounter in terms of fightable monsters?
Monsters, you get to fight them outside the academy for the most part, but there's a variety of monsters, and each monster type has a predetermined set of weaknesses, but they also have their own individual weaknesses. So, for example, the flying type monsters, if you see a hornet, a bee, or a bird, they will be weak to lightning spells, or the lightning element. But some birds will be weak to pierce weapons. Some birds, or some flying types, will be weak to slash-based weapons. But not all will be weak to slash-based weapons. But they do have this common weakness per monster type. So beast monsters will be weak to water. Plant monsters will be weak to fire, and so on. So it's just these are things that the game teaches you once you go to the library, read some books, or attend some classes, talk to NPCs. These information will be given to you.
Okay. And let me see here. So I think we touched upon it a bit here, but how does potion crafting work? Is it just gather ingredients and brew, or is it a bit more elaborate than that?
Oh yeah, I decided to go for a very simple crafting system. So just have the recipe, have the ingredients, go to a crafting station, and then choose the ones that you want to craft. And the reason for that is, I played at some atelier games, and then I also played Manakemia, and I found it very, very difficult to understand. Maybe some people found it easy, but that's a core mechanic of their line of games. I didn't want something as complex as that because it could be a turnoff for non-RPG players. So I want a simple crafting system where people can just ease into it very, very simply.
Okay. And along those lines, the spell system, you seem to indicate that you have to create spells before you can cast them.
Well, you have to learn them. So the basic spell, the very first spell that you learn it immediately once you go to spellcasting basics. For succeeding spells, you will have to take some time reading books, and then you have to read it a total of 3 times. Once you've read it 3 times, then you learn the spell. So you have books as well, which takes time to read. So it could be like 1.5 day. Let's say 2 days and one night. So 3 blocks of time. Then you learn this new spell. So you really have to budget your time properly because you won't learn spells immediately after.
Okay. And I suppose intersecting two strands of conversation here, exactly what spells are classified as forbidden? Like fireball, lightning bolts? Um,
Hmm.
what quantifies a forbidden spell in this universe?
It's really just enhanced versions of the weaker spells. So for example, in Final Fantasy, let's say the default fire spell is called fire, right? The maximum version of the spell, which is the Firaga or Firaja, that's the forbidden spell. But law mages can cast those with easily without any issues. But for most people, they can't cast that properly, which makes it very dangerous if you just allow anybody to use it to try to cast it. But also, it's a power dynamic. The government trying to limit what ordinary citizens can cast. Because some people would say, well, why don't you just train people, make that education, that training available to everyone. So that's also an issue, which one of the characters um, kind of realizes and then advocates for eventually. So, but basically that's it. It's an enhanced version of the basic spells.
Right. And does that apply to just combat spells, or like casting, say, the highest cure magic? Is that a forbidden spell because of the same kind of danger?
Yes, it's also so healing magic is also counted, even buffs and debuffs. So so all of the classifications of spells, all of the enhanced versions. So there's a plethora of spells. Everything that you learn in Law Mage Academy is forbidden to most people, basically.
Okay, I suppose that makes sense. Um, and I'm supposing that this kind of, it's kind of hard to talk about this without getting into, say, potential spoilers, but
Okay,
you know, I,
sure.
I'm assuming that this kind of this system is going to be explored in the story.
Yes, of course. It will be explored definitely. There's a way of introducing it in a proper pacing because if I just do some exposition dump in the beginning, it's going to be very boring and text heavy and people will not understand. Well, they will not read it. So, but it's not spoilers. So don't worry about it. It will be explored. It's just I'm pacing it so people don't get overwhelmed.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, anyway, so I suppose I should ask about the demo here. How, like, what build is this? How long ago was this put up on Steam? That sort of thing.
Hmm. The current one is zero point 0.8. There is a typo in the end which says it's 0.7. So that's a typo, but it's 0.8. I initially I uploaded the very first versions in itch and there were some game breaking bugs, so I immediately went some fixes and had version 0.4 very early because of the bug fixes. But the Steam the very first Steam upload was version 0.6. I think that was about 2020. Yeah, 2020 version 0.6, and then I did an update 0.7, and then 0.8. So probably like this is the third year I think of it being on Steam. Yeah.
Hmm. And well, I suppose that comes to the big question, as it were, and that is, what is the current state of the game? And more to the point, how much more development work do you think you have on Law Mage Academy?
Right. I initially planned for a 2023 release, but the more time passed and life happened, there's a bunch of things that happened in my personal life. So I had to reassess. 2023 isn't a feasible release date. So I don't know when exactly I will complete it, because at this time there are 10 game months, 10 in-game months that I want, right? And so far we have 2 months, so I'm working on the third month, which is almost complete. I just have to sit down for maybe a month or so of focused work before I can finish it. So that's 30% of the game. And then I'll work on
the same year? Is this a school that only has 2
Yes.
months on a year off?
Sorry.
Is this a school where you're in school 10 months of the year?
Yes, correct. So 10 in-game months. And I have, like, I already have a plan for like 80% of the game. It's just the ending that I'm still not yet quite sure of how I'm going to end the last 2 months. But 80%, I already have a document that outlines, okay, we're going to have this. But it still takes a lot of actual work sitting down and typing stuff, testing stuff. Uh, Typing the script. Actually, the script takes a lot of time, and the pixel art takes a lot of time. But putting that into the game, it's easy work. It's really just making sure there are no typos, the sentences are correct. It's written well, and the monsters are balanced, things like that. So that might take some time, but I realize it's also good if I just keep updating the demo, because it engages with it keeps the community engaged. And nobody knows me. I'm a relatively unknown developer, so it just, as the game gets updated, more people play it, then more people will get to know the game. And right now the Steam has about 6,000 wish lists, which is very, very good, because my target is 20,000 wish lists by the end by release. So I'm already at 6,000 wish lists, and I'm not even 50% complete. So that's a pretty good sign. You see, 20,000 wish lists is like the magic number for game developers, for indie developers. If you want to have a successful launch, 20,000 wish lists is a good number to aim for. So I'm at 6,000. So I think I'm on the right track. It's just, I hope people don't lose interest over time. But now I think they're not going to lose interest. Like, the people who really like the game will not lose interest. And even if they do, once the game launches, it will come back to their radar, so to speak. So that's fine.
Right. At least to a certain point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd imagine there's probably some kind of diagram that shows, the patience versus the waiting kind of deal.
Right. Half-Life 3, we've been waiting for so long.
Well, I mean, I don't think Half-Life 3 is ever happening.
Right.
But anyway, so digging a bit deeper into the development aspect of this, how do you handle development of this game, and maintain a day job and all that? How does that all balance out?
Very good question, because that's what a lot of people struggle with in terms of hobbies in general. So
Right.
I try to my core productivity philosophy when it comes to this is just allotting 1 hour in a day, just 1 hour in a day, where I just focus on this. If it's more than an hour, that's great. If it's just 1 hour, that's already very good. If it's less than 1 hour, that's okay. Like, if I'm working on this game, for example, and then I get tired by the 30-minute mark and I have to sleep, that's fine. It means I was still productive. It wasn't a 0 day. Like, that's what game developers call it, like a 0 day where you didn't do anything. So as long as it's not a 0 day, that's still progress, right? And over time, these little steps, little progress, it compounds over time, and then next thing you know, you've made a lot of progress. So just chipping into it 1 hour per day. Well, admittedly, of course, I don't get to work on it every single day of my life. Sometimes I have to go out of town. Sometimes I don't have my laptop. Sometimes I'm too tired, swamped with work. But just that mindset of every 7 o'clock p.m., I'm going to work on this every 7 o'clock. And it's in my calendar every 7 o'clock, right? It just helps develop that habit of working on it for 1 hour per day.
And it sounds like you generally keep to that schedule.
I try to.
Right. I suppose that's the operative word here.
Hmm.
You know. And I suppose another question I have is, are you aiming for a commercial release for this game, or is the full experience going to be free as well?
I'm aiming for a commercial release once the game is finished with the 10 months. Actually, I want an early access release first because by the time the month 10 is finished, there's still some features I want to add as free DLCs or free updates. Actually,
Okay.
I'm gonna call it free updates. So early access maybe for $10 or maybe $10. I don't know. Maybe prices have gone up by that time. So maybe $10 to $15, and then they get the base game and the free updates. And once I'm done with the free updates, and by that time I've fixed a lot of bugs already anyway, and I've gotten feedback from the community, and I've added the things that I want to add. Then I'll do a full release of maybe $20, and then those who already bought it during early access, they get to keep it. So that's one incentive for people to buy during early access. So yeah, definitely a full release. But up until then, it's going to be a free demo, and the demo already offers a lot anyway. And I don't think playing the demo discourages people from buying the game, because that's one fear for game developers, right? I already know the story. Why should I play this game? I've already seen the gameplay, so why should I buy this game? So I designed Lomage, yeah, I designed Lomage Academy in a way that one person's experience could be very, very different from yours. So, for example, if somebody watches Adam's playthrough, once they play Lomage Academy, that will not necessarily be the case, because you could end up in a different house, you could learn different spells. So maybe Adam had a very easy time with this one boss, but you had a very difficult time with this boss, the same boss, because you have different spells. So, and things like that. The choices as well, the choices that you do in the game will affect your experience. And that's one way to keep it interesting and fresh, even though you've seen someone play through the game.
Okay. And that does lead me to this question. That is, at what point do you think you'll be ready to launch this in early access?
Maybe in 3 years' time. Probably in 3 years' time. But if the game needs more time than that, then I will give it that time, because I'm not under a contract with a publisher or anything. I don't have any. I don't owe money to anybody at this point, which is good. I don't have any stockholders or anything, and I'm not on a Patreon. I'm not taking money, a subscription. I mean, I'm taking donations through itch, but I'm not taking anybody's money. So there's no guilt in taking time that I need. And I'm not a professional game developer. This is more of a personal passion project. And I like it that way because I get to work on it on my own terms. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so if I just give it as much time as it needs, I think this is a very slow and inefficient development method, by the way, which is why corporations don't do this, right? They're losing money if they do this. But I think having a game developer take this approach offers something very, very different and something very fresh to the market, because this isn't a rushed, deadline, corporate heavy kind of produced game. It comes from the heart. It comes from the person's ideas, and it took the time that it needed to mature. And I want to do that because this isn't, for me, this isn't a business. If I make some profits, that's great. It will help you pay the bills. But this isn't profit driven primarily. at this point in time, at least. So, but business side will come at a much later date. But for now, we'll just chill and do it at my own pace.
I mean, it's good that you are in a position that affords that. I suppose.
Right, yeah.
Yes. I mean, and as far as the development time, yeah, on the indie scene, 3 to 5 years is not unusual. At least to the people we have talked about. Got to admit, 7 to 8 years is longish, even along those terms.
Right. And the way I think about it is my first 3 years is me learning the engine, like me learning pixel art, how the game works. So, in a way, it's not. I don't want to count it in the development, but I have to be honest. Like so far, I've worked on it for 3 years. It's my first game, but it really those first 3 years is just me learning the skills necessary to build the game. I didn't have timeline yet or how many months plan. I just wanted to make a demo. That's it. I'm planning on finishing the game when I started working on it. But yeah, now I have a clear vision of what I want to do, how I'm going to do it, and getting an idea of how much time it needs to finish it. So it's a more serious approach from this point on.
Well, we certainly wish you luck in that endeavor. And
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I've run through my gamut of questions, so I'll see if my colleagues have anything further for you.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I've piped in when I had something.
All right.
All right. So, Jin, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and your sleep schedule, especially, and being with us here today. Like I said, the game does show promise, and hopefully we do see updates sooner rather than later. But as you said, this is working at your own pace. Anyway, so the game is Law Mage Academy. It is currently available in demo form on itch.io and Steam. And go play that, and you can also wishlist it today.
Right.
Petty, play us to the next segment. Give him a second. He's got to suspend the game. This is the perils of live broadcasting. Make sure that the air doesn't get too dead here.
The thing played. It might have just been Discord being dumb. Hello?
Everything was good. The music was playing while you were saying that stuff, Adam.
Sorry. That's another issue. Discord doesn't have the music as long as it does on Skype.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I was seeing you getting out of the game on the stream. Sorry about that. Anyway, like I said, it's the perils of live broadcasts. Anyway, so welcome to the topic of discussion. So this week, we are talking about Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. It's like you probably, if you've been paying attention to the Nintendo eShop, we watched the Nintendo Direct last week, this was one of the launch titles for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color segments of the Nintendo Switch Online. Not sure if you could call it the headlining title, given all of that released in that batch. You had everything like from Tetris to Wario Land 3 to Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening DX, all heavy hitters in their own right. But I decided on Super Mario Land 2 because that's the game I saw trending on social media. In the wake of the release, which is a good reason as anything to talk about Super Mario Land 2. Now, I suppose first I've seen the question posed: why did Nintendo pick this instead of Super Mario Land 1? Or where is Super Mario Land 1? I'm like, I can
Answer
only
is
say.
probably the pits of hell.
I'm like, I think I could not tell you a definitive answer. The only people that could do that are people who work at Nintendo, and they don't say why they pick what they pick. I mean, as we went over last week, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason, at least on the surface, as to what they picked. Seriously, Alone in the Dark for the Game Boy Color. What the fuck? I'm like, but anyway, if I had to surmise the reason why Super Mario Land 2 was picked over Land 1, it's because, well, quite frankly, Land 2 is the more advanced and better game. Like, at least for the most part. Land 1 was roundly criticized, even back in the day, for not really resembling a Mario game. Like, though you do have to understand that's kind of skewed by the progression of Mario in the US versus Japan. Like, at least a little bit. Because keep in mind, Super Mario Brothers 2 over here is Super Mario USA, / Doki Doki Panic. I think everyone knows that at this point. But that wasn't a Mario game in Japan yet. And so what you had here was Super Mario 1 and 2 being pretty similar to each other. That is the reason Mario Brothers 2 initially did not come over here to the Lost Level days.
Combination of too hard and literally these days it would be considered a level expansion pack.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Super Mario Land does take its cues from the big brothers of the Mario franchise. It's taking cues from the first Super Mario Brothers. When it does, I won't deny that Super Mario Land does step out of its bounds quite a bit in its design and its enemies and all that stuff. Probably the biggest thing is the up levels. But this isn't about Super Mario Land 1. Super Mario Land 2 is definitely much closer to what people think of as a Mario game than Super Mario Land 1 is. Make no mistake, Super Mario Land 2 does have some funkiness about it. But I think a good example, we went over this on Sunday, but this game has actual Goombas and Koopas in its enemy roster, whereas Land 1 had weird kind of knockoff versions of those
I think
enemies.
the Goombas are still mostly Goombas, but it's hard to tell because of the size. Well, they're smaller compared to Mario. But yeah, and I think they're still called some kind of Kuribo. But yeah, the turtles, instead of having kickable shells, they have exploding shells, and then beyond that, it's really weird.
Yeah.
You got your the hopping corpses, you got your friggin' sphinxes, you got your aggressive moai.
Right. And, on the other side of the equation, you've got things like the fire flower
it doesn't give you the fireball. It gives you the super ball, which is bouncy and collects coins. The music is all weird, which is still the case here. Like, you don't get the traditional invincibility music in Super Mario Land 2 either. But like I said, everything stands out more. And some things are different because of the limitations of the Game Boy. Like, both land games use the hearts instead of, the one-up mushroom, because you're not going to be able to discern that too well on a Game Boy, especially an original Game Boy screen.
Yep.
Not
known for its resolution, that one.
No. Like, among other things. We've talked about that screen before. And indeed, that's another thing that affects even Super Mario Land 2. And that is the pacing. Super Mario Land 2 is still slower paced than a console rendition of Mario would be. And
again, this is probably largely for hardware reasons.
Well, hardware reasons, and I think in this case, sprite reasons. Because as Super Mario Land 1 took its design cues from the original Super Mario Brothers, this is taking its design cues from Super Mario World. I know you said 3, but here's the giveaway: that spin jump. That is the
That's
Super
true.
Mario
It does
World.
have the Super Mario World spin jump.
Yeah, that.
I was thinking more about like the literal character design.
Yeah, I'm talking more like the gameplay and all that. Now, mind you, it only does that to a certain extent because the big unique power up that was given to Mario in this game, instead of being a variant on flight, you get the bunny ears, which allows you to glide, which could be.
I mean, it's still pretty much a variation on flight. There's just no way to gain altitude.
Right. Yeah. Not to split hairs here thing, but gliding is not actually considered to be flying. But yeah.
No, I know. I wasn't actually saying that. What I was saying is that mostly the raccoons and Cape also, well, the raccoon particularly, mostly lets you glide. You have to get a really big run up to be able to actually fly with it.
Yeah, but you can still get lift and such with the raccoon tail. It's with the bunny ears, you're gliding, and I think that's to complement the lower processing power of the Game Boy. And that is about it in terms of power ups. Like I said, I guess that's another way it's taking its design cues from Super Mario World. Like, and Super Mario Land 2 to Super Mario Land 1 is definitely one of the biggest jumps I've seen in terms of, let's call it, design confidence I've seen on a system, like the same system. I suppose you can see that as well in the NES Super Mario games.
Mario 3 is worlds away from Mario 1.
Yes. And you can see it in like the hugeness of the sprites and the world, and like I said, this is actually really impressive graphics for the Game Boy. And we're talking just like 3.5 years. Super Mario Land comes out in 1989. This is 1992, but that's the West. I'm trying to remember if this came out in like 91 in Japan, but we can say like 3.5 years. And this is the result.
It's still weird to think that like in Japan, Mario Super Mario Brothers was a relatively late NES title, or like midpoint.
I'm like, it was supposed to be the end of the Famicom.
I know.
Truth be told. But
And the reason it's weird is just because it is a really iconic launch title in the US.
right, that's not, and it's a really iconic game in Japan as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, like I said, you can see that the team, and I guess I should mention that, the both LAN games were not done by Shigeru Miyamoto or his team. Oh no, they were a bit too busy working on Super NES and assorted software for that thing at this point in time. 1989, they would have been done with Super Mario Brothers 3 that came out in Japan in like 1988. And so they would be hard at work on the Super NES. Indeed, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think EAD did any Game Boy games until Link's Awakening. I could be mistaken on that. What I do know is the Game Boy was more the domain of R&D 1 in terms of internal development, which was Gunpei Yokoi's group. So that's another big reason why the LAN games are so off-brand to the Mario series. I think I brought this up when we talked about Sonic CD. When we talked about that, it's still keeping in the franchise, but it's a deviant strain, more or less. And like another way you can see this is in the backstories. I'll just focus on Land 2 here because that's what we're talking about. Because Land 2 is, even by a Mario game, kind of bonkers. And raises questions that have yet to be answered, or even deep cut referenced by the Mario lore. Because, and if you don't know what's going on here, so in Super Mario Land 1, while Mario was in Sriracha Land rescuing Daisy from Tatanga, to do the quick recap there, it turns out Mario's kingdom, Mario Land, yes, apparently Mario has his own kingdom now.
Or at least a estate, a duchy or something.
Yeah, and
he has a castle is the important thing.
Yeah, he has a castle with surrounding lands, which is why it's called Mario Land. And we presume he is the king of this place, or the whatever title you would implant upon him here. Like, he's a fucking royal landowner of some sort. Because, like I said, this is kind of insane. Because, okay, he's got, he's got a big old fucking castle here, and, this heretofore unknown rival, Wario.
That's not that weird.
Yeah, I'm like,
games come up with new bad guys for no apparent reason all the time.
And once again, this is also early days of the Mario franchise, and also a different team. Also, especially in the US, it wasn't that unusual to have a rotating antagonist, because once again, remember, Bowser was only the opponent. It was only the antagonist of Super Mario Brothers 1 and 3. We had Wart in Super Mario Brothers 2, and got Tatanga in Land 1, so Wario being the new antagonist for Land 2 wasn't seen as much of a problem.
Yeah, I think evil copy of Mario is perhaps less out there than, oh hey, it's a random fucking space alien.
Right. Certainly had more charisma than Tatanga did.
You clearly haven't read the same comics as me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm like I've immersed myself in the backstory of the Super Mario Land manga or the Super Mario Land 2 manga, and also the I have read the Mario and Wario comics or Mario versus Mario comics that Nintendo Power produced back in the day, and the backstory there is was a childhood friend of Mario who got unintentionally abused by Mario. He thought he was playing games. It turns out he was doing, kind of shit damage to Wario, and this is his form of revenge. I don't think that's even remotely canon these days because just the retooling of Wario's character that happened after Land 2.
I think that's still his official background, is that just that he's not related at all. They're just like former friends anyway. I was referring to the Valiant comics who the Game Boy story arc for that one is fucked right the up.
Oh yeah. But once again, we're not talking about that particular strain. But I'm more referring to the fact that Wario went on to become his own. He's a beloved icon of Nintendo in his own right.
Mm-hmm. Ever since he stopped living in Mario's shadow and decided to be his own video game producer.
And he distinguished himself quicker and more drastically than Luigi did. Because just keep in mind here that we're still in the days of Luigi being player 2,
right? With optional, slightly different motion tech.
Well, it wasn't slightly different; it was pronouncedly different depending on the game. But we are.
That's what I meant. In some games, it was different; in other ones, it wasn't.
Yeah, well, we're talking 1992, right off the heels of Super Mario World. So he's still player 2. Like, that was rectified in the Game Boy Advance version, but like I said, Wario.
I think Lost Levels actually had him.
Super Mario Brothers 2 and Super Mario USA had the exact same potential in his springy, weird jump. Mm-hmm. But Wario here, he is the anti-Mario, not just in terms of gameplay. He's the fucking bulldozer. He's a lot slower. He's more muscular. He can run through walls. Is the reason why the metal cap was given to him in Super Mario 64 DS. But instead of getting power-ups from mushrooms, he gets power-up from stinky garlic, and which contributes to his purported BO here. And he's greedy.
Lest we forget it was the 90s.
Yeah. He's also greedy and selfish, and he's motivated by money.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know has led to some questionable concerns towards his character design. But, I will say, no, I don't think he's a Jewish character.
I mean, Mario is ostensibly Italian. I mean, not that there are no Jewish people in Italy, but
yeah, he's apparently supposed to be like a German stereotype.
Like, maybe.
Like that's what I've heard. Or he was supposed to be German. But that got screwed up because Charles Martinet took over the voice. This is something I heard. I have no idea if it's true.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
he's a stinky boy and heavy.
Yeah, but that's Wario's evolution as a character. He goes to anti-hero. in this game, he's a
After Mario kicks him back out of his castle in the game that we're actually talking about,
Yeah.
Wario decides, well, if I can't have your castle, I'll have my own castle with genies and whatever shiny things I can find.
And blackjack and hookers. Wait, no, hold on.
See, that's what I was going for, but I was using things that he actually sort of gets.
Blackjack, maybe, but he also might not allow that because that may have him potentially lose money. And Wario is nothing else, kind of a fucking dragon here, in that he literally likes to hoard wealth in his castle. He likes to have fucking Scrooge McDuck levels of money lying around, just to have. And as far as hookers, well, I'd imagine that Wario would have to pay for it, given all of his social.
I've never even gotten any impression that he particularly. I mean, he's never expressed any interest in Captain Syrup aside from getting his shit back that she stole.
I know. I'm just saying here. If he were interested, he'd probably be the type that would have to pay for it, given his, general personality, his odor, his massive personality flaws. And yes, this conversation is going in a weird direction.
Yeah, so anyway,
but I suppose, that's because, honestly, the gameplay is, Mario, but on the Game Boy, but perhaps just a little slower. It is one of the finest Game Boy games, but I find that the most interesting bits to talk about here is how it differentiates itself from other Mario games. Right down to the little things. Like here, the star. Instead of just having you kill enemies, it builds up a meter here that leads to 1-ups. Which wasn't a thing until later Mario games, did the score thing. But you saw it here first. Or how the coins. You collect the coins, but for the first time, I think ever, they have an actual purpose. Not much of a purpose, but a game, a slots machine is a more purpose than just getting alive. I mean, that's a diegetic thing versus a non-diegetic thing. Or at least a quasi-diegetic thing. I'm honestly not sure how Mario is registering things like this mini game here. Now, it's the contemplations of the universe of Mario, I suppose. But like I said, in terms of level design, its aesthetics are probably the most interesting thing going here, because once again, you're kind of limited by the Game Boy, so you're not getting the more interesting level designs of Super Mario Brothers 3 or Super Mario World, i.e. slopes and shit like that. Not a lot of diagonality in this game. There is a surprising amount of verticality, especially considering Land 1. But once again, you are kind of restricted by what the original Game Boy can and can't do. And like I said, some of the levels themselves are inspired, like Macro Zone or Pumpkin Zone.
The entire world that's set inside of a giant robotic Mario, and the one that's just Mario apparently had decided on having a Halloween territory or something.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we haven't really talked about, the giant Mario statue of himself. That's also clockwork. Why
it's Mecha Mario.
Why does Mario have this?
Why don't you have it?
Well, it's also because it actually kind of runs counter to it to his character, because Mario is usually portrayed as the humble everyman, but once again, not only is he a wealthy landowner, but he's apparently got an ego to match and rival Wario's because he's got his own fucking statue in the shape of him that's 50 foot tall and in the manga does run amok, by the way, because apparently this is an actual kingdom in the Super Mario Land 2 manga. And when the Mario mech goes awry, it starts destroying the people's homes. This is all true. Like, also the Mario Land 2 manga gives a actual backstory as to why Tatanga is here. Turns out Wario kind of lured him as a hired gun, and I think at this point Daisy is evil.
Is that also the story as to why Tatanga was there in the first one?
No, like Daisy is evil in this one because she's jealous of Peach.
Okay.
Like, Peach is an actual character here. Look, the Super Mario Land manga series, and it continues on beyond Land 2, believe it or not, because it continues into Donkey Kong 94, and it ties in Donkey Kong Country in that. Like I said, we're getting into a whole weird area here that we don't have time for. In terms of biggest disappointment in the game, that's easy. Bosses. The bosses are pretty typical Nintendo easy. I suppose.
Jump on their heads 3 times.
Yeah, jump on their heads 3 times, and honestly, most of the bosses don't offer a lot of combat prowess. Granted, this has always been kind of a problem with the Mario Bros. Series. Like, it's not a game series that's well renowned for its bosses. But I honestly think Land 2 is a step down from Land 1 in this department.
I mean, Land 1 used you had original bosses, but they all had the you can sneak past them and hit the switch to win instantly mechanic.
Right. I think the only exception there is Wario, because Wario decides to really tune up the evil twin motif to its expected levels, I think, because it's not quite mirror matched, thankfully, because perfectly symmetrical combat never helped anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But you do get Wario engaging in the power-ups that you get Fire Wario and Bunny Wario, but he's still taking out in 3 hits. Anyway, as much as I would love to continue this conversation, we do have to wrap it up because we are rapidly approaching the time of Moonhawk Studios Presents, and we do have a new episode, and Mac is intending to be here this week, but not next week, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the week ahead. So on Friday, February 17th, we'll be having Zoo Ethsham of Berserk Boy Games, who is creating, appropriately enough, the upcoming action platforming game Berserk Boy. Look for more of that conversation on Friday. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be reviewing Dead Estate, Floating Islands of Nucifera, Kenosis, and Shape Palette. So until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.